Okay, so here we are with my new camera, taking a look at this, I think, third stock round of the game. I think it's the third. Priority deal sitting over here, and he's got a number of things to consider. First of all, I don't have a lot of options to invest in. I suspect somebody's going to start a company. I don't particularly want to be the person to do that. I'm not in a position. Yes, I could. I have some outstanding shares and nothing I can buy with them. But I would rather be an investor at this point, following my usual procedure in an 18xx game. There is one outstanding certificate still available, which is the Boston and Albany. And that's not too bad. So I'm going to pick that sucker up for $100. But I want to talk about something else that I saw that does not make me happy. I'm sitting here on the Susquehanna and Western. It's filled up on loans. It's kind of looking at, hey, is there anything that I'd want to short sell? Yes, it has a train. Okay. It's low here. It can probably be turned into a valueless property. Now, some people have said, oh, if it has a train, it's pretty safe. I would say no. The fact that it's full up on loans means it's going to be damn hard to buy certificates out of the bank pool. Even at their low $50 each, I can't do it. Now, the player could defend its price. And this is what I was used to the last time I played it, where short sales were somewhat inhibited by the fact that you can't ensure that you're going to break its stock value to the point where it's just going to collapse and be worth almost nothing. Therefore, I'm not sure it's a good idea to go for this. People would still be considering it here, but in this case, I'm at my three shares. I can't hold anymore. The company doesn't have the cash for them. It looks like it's free game. By the way, about the camera. So I did a test. I can't even tell if I'm recording on this one. This is the camera that lost me like 30 minutes of interview with Frank Chadwick. Like I just basically introduced it and came back because the on-off button is hard to get used to. It's user error type stuff, but it's never been a very good camera, and it always shows yellow. And maybe there's something I can do with the complex settings and something to fix that. I don't know. But it's supposedly the, cost-wise and everything was the best camera I picked up. Has a higher zoom capability than anything else. And it's got some advantages, but it's a pain in the butt to use. And it's just not what I needed. And I've just stuck with these Averios. JVC Averios, which seem to give a better video quality, which to me seems kind of important, and since they're cheaper and everything. The problem with them, and maybe it's the case with this too, the YouTube videos that tell you how to fix the screen, if you can get the goddamn screws off, it's easy enough, but the Averios in particular make it hard. You apparently have to disassemble the whole camera. So I managed to pull out one of my very oldest video camera, and I couldn't turn the screws on it. It was just like, this is fucking ridiculous. And if I'm gonna spend an hour playing with it, well, it's about as cheap to get another camera. And I can't imagine that it would take me less than an hour, assuming, everything went perfectly. I'd feel a little rush for getting things fixed in an hour, but if you take them in to repair them, they cost more than, getting another used camera would. which is not a great price. You know, I'm paying like 50, 60 bucks per camera, but whatever. There we go. There's also a delay between when it beeps and when it actually starts videoing. And it's just a pain in the butt. What I'm looking for here is the game phases, which tells you what kind of companies you can start. And I'm on the 3. I think that means I can start 2 or 5 share companies. Because I'm looking at him and trying to decide what the hell he wants to do. He doesn't have a hoard of money. But he could generate money by short selling. Well, he'd have to sell a Susquehanna, then he could short sell a Susquehanna. That's 100 more bucks. And that starts getting me enough cash to put something up for auction. Here's the problem. There's a 3 train still sitting in the way. So this isn't the best turn to start things, right? Well, I don't know. But the last train of a series is generally a bad choice. And what about great places to start? Well, there are openings like this that shouldn't have been left open that aren't bad. And up here there's an opening which nobody was going to get into. Then there's Boston. But then there's not a whole lot of great places. This one is probably the most attractive because a lot of infrastructure has been put in there. And for whatever reason, the Alton and Southern did not dot that. And they fucked themselves over by doing so. It takes me almost as long to get the camera started as to give what I'm going to say. So I took a look at this guy. I rolled the die on him because I can't make a decision as to whether or not to try to start a company. Starting a company means getting rid of some stock. It means some other things involved. And although I don't have a great idea of what I'm going to use my money for, I could actually do an upgrade to one of these companies to push my money in, say, in the second M&A round or something like that. Maybe some things will open up that I'm interested in. Right now, I don't see anything, but I'm just going to pass. And that pushes priority to me. I think somebody's going to do something. I just don't know who. The dam broke with the owner of the Boston and Albany. Pittsburgh also kind of passed. Boston and Albany decided to short sell a New York Susquehanna. Now I have some cash. I don't have the most cash at the table. Do I want to try starting my company at this moment? Or do I want to wait and see if maybe I can short sell more shares of something, make more money? Again, the auctions, the fact that I can't just cash in and buy a presidency, that makes this a much, much harder thing. So, again, I'm going to rely on die rolls to make my decisions for me. He is going to hold off and not buy anything. He just did his short sale, and now he's floating over. And that brings me to the Alton and Southern player, who, good God, with all this extra money out there, maybe it's worth keeping the New York and Susquehanna alive. And then all the short shares end up in his hands, and that isn't good. If he's holding a whole shitload of them, if other players are willing to float it, or are willing to keep it alive and buy up those shares because it's going to make money, really what it just does is it just crushes him. The choices are between crushing someone who maybe is already struggling under some weight, or crushing someone who seems to be trying to take advantage of the system. And I'm a little bit more tempted to buy up those New York and Susquehannas and let him dangle with his bad investment. Something of a defensive move here, actually. He short sells to have more money than him. If he tries to start a company here, I can bid it out. If he tries to start a better company. Don't know if this is the right way to do things. I was going to start a new company, but I kind of don't want to start one and then leave this open. Does that make a difference? Well, I don't know. Because I can always merge these two and kind of avoid my problem. So maybe I just want to start a new corporation right now. while I have the cash for it. But I chose instead to hold off and hold that cash. That gives me enough money to bid in on something else. Because, you know what, having like 3 companies building the same track and then merging 2 of them or something, that sounds pretty potent to me. Over here, on the other hand, I never trust this camera. It does this jerky little start, and I don't know if it cut off a couple words, whatever. Has decided 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Certificate limits 11 and 6 players. Has decided to actually protect us in New York Susquehanna, largely because he wants to keep cash available so he can buy these companies up. He needs to get some cash into them so that they can make it to the next level. So he needs to reserve money through the stock round. And again, this is something you don't normally do in an XX game, right? Try to move into the operating rounds with a fistful of money. And these are cheap. And again, he thinks maybe he's hurting other people better than he's better in a better position than hurting someone who seems to be slitting their own throat. Of course, that leaves him in the interesting position where he could dump the company. It doesn't look that bad. I do want to save it. I like the track it's building up. It's just a question of can I, and if other people are helping me out, I think I'll sit and just grab the priority deal. Now, if anyone's safe buying shares of it, it's this guy. Because more is going to happen. So I'm safe sitting on the 2 shares unless it were dumped right now. That's the question. Is it so hosed that the New York Susquehanna owner just wants to get rid of it? I don't feel like it is. But maybe I'm mistaken there. This guy cannot afford to buy another share of it because he's sitting directly after the owner of the president. It will get demolished if you're sitting in that position, just like it would in most 18xx games. Again, I didn't think you could shift trains around, which makes, that kind of attack much more difficult. So, the Providence and Worcester could buy this other 3 train for $1 again and just leave the New York and Susquehanna as a smoldering hulk, which would destroy anybody who touches it. So he simply passed. Pittsburgh ended up buying a New York and Susquehanna again. If I'm not going to do anything, I want to make the most income I can off the nothing I'm going to do. I'll be able to reinvest that income into Pittsburgh growing to a 10-share company. And that puts me to Boston and Albany's owner. And, once you're in this, you're kind of stuck going ahead. This is not a quantity of money that I want to start a corporation with necessarily. So I'm going to keep selling short as long as I have the opportunity to do so. With another short sale here as well, this is beginning to look iffier and iffier. There's one more certificate to go short. That means there would be 3 in there. That gets to the acquisition. It has to pay something out and keep itself above water. The call is basically either dump it all and go short. There's nobody else who can protect it really. Or, and I'm not hurting the people who bought it except in terms of they've lost, options where they could have done something. Or buy another certificate and hope to mitigate the damage as much as possible. Hope that it makes some money. I don't know which way to go. Again, I kind of want this money to go into these 2 railroads. I don't want to start another railroad. That's for sure. So I think I'm stuck continuing to try to protect the New York and Susquehanna. Okay, another short sale here. I got the most money that I'm going to have. I'm going to start minus the possibility of short selling an Alton and Southern, which is on my mind, although that looks a little healthier than the New York Susquehanna and might start a whole new round of fiddling with the short sales. I'm putting an opening bid of $160. The idea being that while that'll start the stock value at $80 a share, I'll be starting a 5-share company at $400 if I can do that. That's my bid. Now, there are other people who can put that kind of money down. There are 2 other people at this point, right? This guy, who doesn't know whether or not to allow this to happen in order to prevent that dot from happening here. He's not sure what the hell he's going to do if he doesn't start one of these 2 companies, though. And this is actually the more attractive. And this guy over here who has desires to throw cash into his companies. We could always see the problem with boosting these to 10-share companies is I take away that possibility of the merger, which is an appealing possibility. I screwed up on that initial bid. That should not be that. I don't know what it should be. I put it at 160, but I was thinking that would be enough to buy 5 shares. I can't buy 5 shares. So it's going to be 3 shares. So let me see what my bid comes to. It's 390. So we'll put a bid of 130. No, that can't be right. 260 as my initial bid. And let me keep thinking. Now this guy has chimed in with a 270 bid, which puts it up to there, the 135 space with a 2-share company. Do I want to fall back to a 2-share company? That's going to buy less trains than I kind of want it, but I don't know. I may let this pass and then try to buy a company down here, which is what he was trying to avoid having happen, in order to get the cash that I want into the 3-share company. And I'm not sure it makes sense to start it at the 260 bid, because that doesn't work. The 240 bid doesn't get as much money in there, though. That only gets me to 360. And I mean, I got 650. I gotta boil up with this company. But if my bid is less than this one, the first 4 train may be gone already, which might also be an advantage or a disadvantage. It's hard to tell. Just to let it go. And so $270, a 2-share company running at the top of the schedule, which can of course buy trains off the Strasbourg and Alton and Southern, so it's not necessarily that big a deal. It's a lot of cash invested, but now I think we just spin around, although the Alton and Southern is beginning to look more iffy. Maybe people want to short that. I don't know. Okay, didn't manage to successfully turn it off. And after going around again, this guy shorts an Alton and Southern. Things are beginning to get ugly. That means he has enough money to put a bid of 150. I'm sorry, a bid of 300 on starting the Bessemer and Lake Erie, which is going to start down here. Now, he was planning on the merger. This kind of solidifies that decision. So there you have that. This is going to be the first running company, so it can take a train from the Boston and Albany as needed. It should be fairly wealthy, and I do not expect to be able to need the first 3 train. But here's the problem. If both of these kind of cannibalize a train to try to avoid that 3 train, then the game goes into a stalemate where they're both hurting each other. Both of them are hurting their own companies. So it may be that I go forward with the $650 and just push forward doing that. The reason not to is to not get that 4 train out until I get some more cash into my Boston. So there might be a little juggling before the purchasing happens, you know. These kind of things happen. Nobody has $300 on hand except him. He could up that bid. His plan says not to do that. So this is going to float. It's going to float as a 5-share company. We've shifted around another time. He's just trying to add insult to injury by shorting more Alton than Southerns. If you're going to short something, you want to short it hard, I think. Of course, shorting something a little bit got him the money for that loan, but he thinks the Alton and Southern is going to be in trouble with 4 loans and running only a 3 train. It may not end up making him money to do this, but the more shares you short, the more each share goes down if nobody can protect it, and nobody is protecting it for various reasons. He's the person in the position to protect it. This guy could, but as long as he keeps shorting them, it doesn't make sense. I gotta have somebody in between doing something, and it doesn't look like anybody has been. Other people are a little iffier, like, yeah, it'll probably make money, man, you know. But that's beginning to look a little bit more questionable from their point of view. So maybe I should get rid of this share, because there's a second player who's involved in shorting it as well. This guy's a little pissed about him jumping in on the Susquehanna, and he's going to jump in on the Alton and Southern and try to knock it down a little bit. Which makes maybe it's not worth holding and is better to short. I'd like to be making money off the rail, but that doesn't seem to be a possibility now. Now, we could end up in the complicated situation where these two companies end up merging into a 10-share company, and, well, as long as nobody's these two. As long as nobody's shorting the Strasbourg, we're okay. And so far, nobody has been. But if both of them end up shorted, there could actually be too many certificates out there. And there's a way to handle that. There's sort of notional certificates from the old company or whatever that are in play until it resolves itself naturally. But to tell you the truth, there's a better way, which is 1817 comes with the cards to allow you to play the extended shorts, where you could have up to 10 shorts out there. The problem with that, of course, is you have to kind of remember. Either way, you have to kind of do some mental information holding. So, all these shorts, the shorts on the Alton Southern, for example, may mean the Grand Trunk Western gets used differently than it was initially intended. Not really starting as a major company of its own, but kind of trying to keep things afloat long enough that I don't collapse. The Alton and Southern's in a much stronger position than the Susquehanna, though. So even if 5 shares are shorted, 2, 4, 5, and out there, it's in pretty good shape. And look, the Susquehanna only has 2 shares out there, so it's not falling into acquisition. That's kind of the big deal, is that, hey, somebody could just buy that sucker for $10 if they have room for the loans that it's carrying. That's a big if. But paying $10 for that whole company comes out to like $2 a share right now, which would be a significant decrease, and that would definitely help out the short sellers. So, maybe one of their companies is willing to take on that burden if they have the room. Nobody's got the room for those loans right now, though. They'd have to go to a 10-size company, and I don't think that's worth it. So chances are this is going to have its own opportunity to get out of the hole. Nobody's just going to be able to buy it. I think this is where we end up at the end of the round with him unable to really do much. He's kind of frozen. He couldn't get rid of his Alton Southern because it might give this guy priority, and we don't want that, right? Because then we have to get rid of our Susquehanna share. So we'd rather hold on to that Alton Southern. It might lose money, but this guy looked and said, I think I'm going to lose money off the Alton Southern, and if that's the case, I should sell it. And if I'm selling it, I might as well short it. Got himself some more cash, planning on putting it into the Pittsburgh. That left him with priority, which was kind of cool, except this guy bought. So this guy, I think, sold the New York, Ontario, and Western. He had the cash. He could have rebought it, but he's not allowed to. Leaves him with the position to buy that share, which should probably make some money. You know? Shit. What did I have that we wanted to do? We don't have quite enough money to buy any of those Susquehannas yet, which is a shame because they're going to go down in value real soon, like right now. So we will take a look at what's sold out and what's not. Obviously, the Bessemer is not. I got that over there because too many companies on this side of the board, it turns out. Grand Trunk just started. It's a 2-share. Isn't going to go anywhere. Pittsburgh's a 5-share and is sold out. So it moves forward. Boston, 5-share, sold out now. Union, 5-share, sold out. No. Joliet, yes. Alton and Southern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Strasburg is actually sold out. Arcade is only 2 shares. The NW is sold out. The New York and Susquehanna is both sold out. There's at least 100% in players' hands, I believe. Let's see. One. That may be the case with the no, the Alton. There's more than 5 in there, so yeah. So the Susquehanna moves forward 1 and back 2 for the 2 shares that are in there, and you can see it's not getting hammered by the short sales, but the Alton is, and it's got a problem. It's got to pay out at least $80 to get out of the acquisition space. It's got 4 loans on it. It's not terribly attractive, but I don't know, maybe. You know, we'll shift this here, put a couple of dice there. And let's hope when I put this thing together that it ends up in the right order. That's one of the problems with this camera. I did a test thing and it stacked them together in the opposite order of what I expected. But I should be able to fix that one way or another. All right. Taking a break. So, the big question on the new operating run, and I always have to hit the zoom out on this camera. It's like it resets whenever it's off. The Bessemer on Lake Erie, I laid track. I paid out the mail contracts. Is at a higher stock value. The Grand Trunk Western is going to be able to make sure that it goes after it, no matter what I do. Because it's only a 2-share company, I can only take out 2 loans. Which brings the question to, do I want to shoot this up to 650 now? And if so, do I want to get any money in the Boston and Albany ahead of time? I think the answer to the, do I want to bring the 4 train out already, is yes. Which kind of begs the question, because then I only have 3, 4, 5, $600 in here total. So obviously I can't buy the 3 and the 4, and that actually is problematic. So I'm gonna instead try to hold $400 in pocket and buy a deuce over there from the Boston and Albany with what's left, whatever that is. I got 400 in pocket right away. I can pull, let's say those are 70 each, 140. So I can spend about 140 bucks on a 2-train. A miscalculation. This is a 5-share company. I just don't have the marker on it. So let me change things. I only put 125 in there. Let me rethink this because I have more cash on hand. The 2-train company is the Grand Trunk Western. Instead, I leverage maximum. I could juggle the 2 trains, let the 3 be retired. Geez, that might make more sense, no? I don't know. It seems like the more sensible thing. The 3 is going to go away. I would get first chance to buy. I just leveraged all my shares up, and that doesn't make a lot of sense now. God damn it. I don't want that last 3 train. So yes, I'm going to delay. I'm going to unwind this as well. The problem with doing this is it doesn't hurry things up for all the short sales that I have, which could throw me into a cash crunch. And that would be very bad. I think if I run the Boston and Albany, I should be able to survive it though. Trunk Western also doesn't get to run. It actually buys a 3 train off the Alton and Southern because the DOT canceled the Alton and Southern out a little bit, but it paid basically full value for it, which will help pay off some of the loans maybe or something. Again, trying to avoid that the pain of having to pay of going into the acquisition stage. Pittsburgh takes its big run with 3 trains up to 31 a share, swallows 150 of it, pays out 16. That moves it forward and gives me enough cash to buy back a loan. Shit. Which increases stock value, which is important if I go up to a 10 share. I didn't make as much cash though if I go up to a 10 share, but I got plenty in my hand for it. So I see this as overall a good thing, as sort of a temporary holding. The question is, do I ever want a 4-train? Probably. I can't run slow across the game. That's something I know from almost any XX. Maybe this one's different. Over to Boston. Kind of conservative play on the Boston and Maine. Boston and Albany. Paying down loans, getting its stock value up, ready to invest. 50% payout. It's kind of more problematic because I don't have enough money in my pocket yet to put a lot of value in, and I've got a lot of short positions to hold to protect. So we might see the Boston and Albany kind of getting itself into some trouble here. Somewhat bigger call on the Union Railroad coming out of Baltimore. Outran for full value, shooting the stock value up. If I upgrade that to a 10 train, I got cash to buy up a couple more shares and a lot of room for loans. I got plenty for loans for a 4. Here's the question. Do I want to go around without a train? And I think the answer is no. So I think I'm actually going to buy that 3 train. This was something nobody really noticed, at least at this point in the planning, that, I need to get a train there. I don't need a 3 train here. I get a turn that works fine there. And that means I need another loan in order to pay off the interest on that loan. I don't think that makes sense, actually. I think I only want to pay out half, which means I owe some money from everyone. And let's redo the loans. I know I keep backtracking and doing stuff. It's because the mechanisms in this game are so unfamiliar to me. The reason I don't think it makes sense is that the union's already at 5 shares. I'm going to have to throw money into the arcade in Attica to keep it solvent. If I'm buying that 3 train, I got to get those loans down. I'm not going to be able to swallow regularly. I'm not going to be able to swallow with any great value. And so instead, hopefully I removed the $22 per share correctly. Because remember, it's paying out $220. The shares are double shares essentially, so they were worth $44. Moved the price up one though because I was able to retire a loan, so I've ended up at a better place overall. Still haven't gotten rid of my loan, and that's somewhat problematic. I have enough cash to pay it off a couple of times, but that doesn't look as healthy as it might. Alright, continuing. Almost considering a full swallow over on here on the Elgin and Joliet, because, I'm not going to sell my own shares, and they can make up a swallow in this kind of game with a double payout, whatever. But a half pay actually moved me 2 spaces. It's hard to refuse that. And the negative side of it, though, was I wasn't able to pay off any of my loans. Now, again, the price of loans is dropping as people are paying them out, but they may go back up real soon, I feel like these hot-running companies, it's like it feels like they're supposed to swallow full. And it's just the general case in most games. But then again, I also have I can't do it when I can pay out half and not lose stock value. I don't know how much stock value matters in this comparatively. But again, when I go up to a 10, the more cash I have in my pocket, the better off I am. So there's also that. Providence and Worcester also paid out half. It's only a 2-share company, so I got to pocket most of that money and paid off a loan to make up the extra stock value. Paying out full might get more cash in my pocket, but I got other things I can do. All right, now we're getting to the stuff that people started screwing with, right? Well, not the Strasbourg, but yeah, not till we hit down here. Okay. But some iffy things going on down here. The one thing is, by not buying that 3 and the 4 initially, I took away the hammer. Yes, the union bought a 3, and that means the hammer's coming out. But it would have been a lot more devastating if it happened right up here, and would have knocked a lot of those companies into trouble. Most notably, the companies that he was shorting. And he may have to pay a price for, not taking that more excessive action. And in a similar situation to what the Elgin did over here, half payout got me 2 spaces, pile of cash, problem, unable to pay off the loans again. Too many loans, 1 less loan, and I would have been able to start spiraling the loans through. But swallowing is, I don't know, it just seems so wrong to me emotionally. The other problem is the Alden Southern has a lot of loans, a little bit of cash on it, but not really a lot of prospect for it's got to pay out this time to get itself out of there. And it would be in a world of hurt if, I think a lot of people would be in a world of hurt if we had pushed this a little harder. Even like the Union, which got the 3 train and isn't in really a happy place because of it, but would be in a much less happy place with no trains, which is what could have been the case there. We're seeing the same, what I consider kind of conservative play. Hey, pay out half, pay off my loans and everything like that. But everything looks like it's kind of ready to come off the rails on most of these companies. Where maybe a swallow would have been the better move. So like, yeah, sure, the Stroudsburg's fine. It has a 3 train. New York and Ontario, though, yeah, it has a 3 train. But it also, same thing with the Stroudsburg. They've got 3 loans on them. That's going to eat up. This turn it was eating up $90. If I can't retire those loans, I feel like I got a problem. Now, I think there's an out for the Stroudsburg, which is merging into the Alton and Southern. Don't know if there's an equivalent out with merging with the Elgin and Joliet for the New York Ontario. Maybe that's where we're going with both of these guys who have a couple of companies running, and that may end up being where everybody's heading. The other option, of course, is boosting up to 10 shares, trying to get enough cash into them, but that's painful too. Of course, the thing is, I don't have the opportunity to retire all these loans that I have between these 2 companies. But I can pay enough maybe to start returning them. Now we're at the hellscape, which is the Susquehanna is first. Now, this is going to be problematic because whatever it pays out, these guys have to pay, and it wants to pay something out. I can tell you that much. It does have a whole lot of loan on it. Susquehanna paid out half, again, getting to move forward too. Wow, that's going to hurt people too. $130 paid out, 130 in the pocket. The 130 in the pocket is almost enough to cover its loan servicing. But it meant that for each of these short shares, people are paying $26. Plus, this guy is able to make as much as he's able to make off of the company. So, a lot of money, moving around on that one. Now to the poor Alton, which has even more problems being in the acquisition space. The Alton and Southern is a little bit more painful than anything else. It had to pay out full in order to move forward 2 spaces. I was hoping a half would do it, but it won't. Not with only a 12 run in play. These count as if they're 40 spaces in order to move forward. Would it be terrible if I was acquired? Well, maybe not. I mean, who would want me? Right? I'm pulling a lot of loan. That is a good question. But instead, I did pay out full to make the people who are holding the short positions be in trouble. This guy owes $48 and doesn't have it. He has 45. He's a little short. That means he has to sell a share of something in order to rectify the situation, which again, that's going to hurt his overall income and capability to pay off these short positions. Which one looks the most iffy? Well, the Bessemers are worth a whole shitload of money, and remember, it's not going to hurt my stock value, so throwing something in there wouldn't be terrible. The Bostons are worth even more money. Which one looks like it's better poised to do well? I'm going to say the Bessemer looks like it's better poised to operate. So I'm going to sell a Boston for $150, raising that 48 pretty easily. The first 4 train gets exported. That kills all the deuces. And I'm going to have a whole bunch of things that happen. Now, one thing that doesn't happen, it's kind of, I remember being a little confused about this, but you don't end up in the liquidation space unless you end your operating turn, your company's operating turn, without a train. So no matter what, you get a chance to buy your train. You don't just get wiped out here, because somebody just bought a 4 outside of your period. You do get a chance to try to recoup your company. That's an important factor. But I got a lot of 2s to go. And at the end of this, nothing looks very healthy. Yeah, we got somebody with just a 2+ train here, another one there. Nobody's... Well, there's a couple with a 2 in it, or one with a 2 and a 2+. The Elgin and Joliet. And the Bessemer has nothing on it, and will be falling back. Maybe that would have been the one to drop, because it's not making anything on the next run. That was definitely a mistake. Let me reverse that. So I owe $15 and I'll swap the Bessemer. Overall, it looks like the better company, but I need to make some cash next round. So the difference between those two is $15. And we'll put that there. Okay. Now it's time for mergers and acquisitions, and nothing's in the acquisition space, so the Alton and Southern can't just be taken over, although I don't know how healthy it looks. And we forgot to do something with the Alton and Southern, didn't we? We forgot to pay its services loans. Paying out full, I was able to still remove a loan. If I had swallowed half, another $60 wouldn't have gotten me another loan. Had I swallowed full, I would fall back to this space. I would have had $120 more. I would have been able to put 2 loans into play, back, but I'd be in the acquisition space, and that's no good at all. So I think this is what we have to do. And God damn. We'll start with the Pittsburgh and start figuring out what we want to do, and I believe that'll be going to a 10-share company so that I can buy some more stock in it. And as appealing as maybe Pittsburgh and Erie are, nobody wants to do the math to figure out whether they can afford, and they probably can't, $165 share of that thing. We bought 2 more shares of it. That gets us to 50%. Paid for the 2 tokens, $100, and that leaves us a little bit of a nest egg that we can start taking out loans with. I don't know if we want a 4 train, but this is the problem. If we don't buy the 4 trains, the game goes into a long, slow period as we just wait for them to export. If we do buy them, we're getting ourselves in a position where maybe permanent trains are not going to be easy for us to get. Always a struggle in an XX, right? I hate the mechanics on this camera. I open up the screen and it doesn't turn on. Most of the time it does, but if I pause for a while, it just shuts down completely, and then I have to wait, and it reboots the whole, it's not slow, but it reboots the operating system, so it takes like a second or 2, and it's just so obnoxious. Okay, so we've seen 2 more expansions. Elgin and Joliet expanded. He bought up a basically maximum number of shares. A couple of people who had some extra money kind of didn't really think about them wanting to buy in, but it turns out that they actually had a certificate of it. And then the Providence and Worcester also did an expansion up to 5-share company, and it just sold out. And I'm not sure why, except that it's sitting here with no debt and probably is just going to do just peachy. Might actually just run into nowhere. And now we're getting to the complicated stuff. I think I want to merge the Strasbourg. Yes, that gets my debt limit into an ugly position, but it keeps me from having to buy a train right away with my no money. God, this is hideous. But it also is going to do significant damage to people who are holding the Alton and Southern short stocks, because it's going to run for money without, having to full swallow or anything like that. And it's going to centralize the value at half of 125, which will be at the 60 rate, shooting the stock value back up on those shares. So the way a merger works is a little different. We haven't seen one, so this is going to be a 5-share merger, and they become a 10-share company, and they exchange stock on a 1-for-1 basis. One of the companies survives, the other one goes away. With all those short shares out, I think I'm going to pick the Alton and Southern to survive. Makes it a little easier to convert the shares. So everything the Alton and Southern had, or everything the Strasbourg had, goes into the Alton and Southern. All the loans. It's now a 10-share company, and this guy had a couple of Alton and Southern shorts, but he had a Strasbourg share, so that canceled out one of his shorts, and so we've already started retiring some of the short sales there. This is done, so I'm going to push it down here so that I can remember it. We'll go to this guy. Okay, I'm converting a mistake which would have been a massive, massive problem, which is he had to do a conversion on the Attica. Much earlier in the turn, he could have done a conversion to 10-share on the Union. But instead he did it to the he was planning on doing it to the Attica. If he did it to the Union would have to buy a train, the Attica would have to buy the train from the Union, all kind of icky stuff there. And I don't know why I didn't choose that, because I had shitloads of money to put into the Union, and it's probably not going to be advancing much. It's got a 3-train now. It can run 50, 60, 11, 17 a share, it looks like, at this point. It would have to pay out full to increase in value, which it'll probably do, but all my cash isn't really helping me. So what I had done wrong was I had gotten to the point where I could not buy an arcade in Attica without exceeding my share limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I gave back the Providence share and took the $90 back from that, which the owner of the Providence is a lot happier with this. He didn't really want to be completely sold out. He wants to make some money off of being able to pay out heavily, because his stock value is fairly high. And that pushes us to the hardest problem of all, the Susquehanna. Now, this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's still got a space up. This is the only guy who was fully booked in his shares. Note that the short sales count as nothing. They're just debt. Let's talk a little about the problem of the Susquehanna. So, obviously it's heavily indebted. It's got some short sales out there. If I float it up to 10 shares, I can buy at most 3 of them, $55 each. That's $165 I'm putting in here. 100 of that bucks goes for the tokens. That leaves me with 65, and that'll help me pay these loans off. But here's the big rub to the whole damn thing. Hey, that'll help me pay off the interest on the loans for one round. But the real problem is I'm running a train that is making $140. My interest is $150 here. It'll be going down a little bit, right? So it'll be $125. But basically a full swallow pays my loan interest, and putting extra money into it isn't going to really help me. So I think it's a lost cause, to tell you the truth, and that's a shame. it's got kind of an interesting position with these two there. The only way that I can make it work is if I could get its stock value up so that I can dump more money into it. Now, of course, I can take out more loans and run for longer and be a constant drain on these people if I'm paying anything out. But I think it's something that I'm willing to let drift towards the acquisitions, which probably means I want to dump in a share when I get a chance. I don't think I can fully save it. Now, once it's in acquisitions, it's kind of like when companies get down in 1830 into the brown zone or whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, well, sure, you can take it. Go ahead. You can have it all at once. Do you really want it? The only reason it's working is because there's lots of shares in the bank pool. But in this, there's no such thing as lots of shares in the bank pool. They have to be in the treasury, which means I have to have the cash for them. Of course, if I put that extra money in at the right time, maybe I can get cash in the bank pool. But I can't because I've got to go through another operating round. I got to pay off those loans. Maybe I can take out a whole bunch more loans with a 10-share company, because this thing looks like it's on the road to hell, and I don't think there's a way to solve it. Floating it larger, not buying the shares. Well, I can't do that without eating up. I don't know. Without eating up the, I'll owe $100, which, that's another loan basically. Not just $100, but then the interest on that loan, which I don't have to pay right away. But yeah, $100 would be an extra loan to expand. That extra expansion gets me 4 more loans. Maybe I can buy shares, out of the open market with that shit and try to pay out. I mean, it would keep some value. It doesn't have much right now. Let me think. I decided I had to do it. I had to buy all the shares up as well. I'm sort of floating it with my own cash in this sense. And yeah, it's not going to do much good. But here's what it does that helps me out. If I don't keep it alive, I'm responsible for that $500 in loans. The $125 I put into it just now, and it's not going to go below 40 in a sense, right? Unless somebody does pick it up, and then they take those loans off my hand. So yeah, I think I can afford to go up to a 10-share company, to take that $15 a share loss on 3 more shares, and use the company as best I can. The only thing that can get me in trouble is the loans. So if I can figure out a way by swallowing whatever to start paying down those loans, I'll be in better. I'll be in better shape than if I don't. Like if I just let it crash as it's going, because it looks like it's a hopeless case otherwise. Again, I don't understand enough about making a private sale, like a friendly sale, for anyone to think about doing it. The Bessemer is sitting on a shitload of cash, but that's the money they're planning on buying their train with. Maybe a train for the Boston Albany. Oh, God, I don't know. All right. I'm just going to pass on that. I mean, see, this is the thing, I mean, what am I going to do? Put the Boston and Albany up for sale? What happens if I sell it? I could get a shitload of money. But yeah, I think I want two companies more than I want to incur debt to pay into my pocket, which is essentially what would happen from it. And what if somebody else buys the Boston and Albany? Well, then it's gone, but I mean, it's in their hands instead of mine. And I don't know if that's that terrible, but it's not a completely unhealthy company. I've kind of slowly built it up. I'm running out of battery. The same way that, the Pittsburgh area is slowly built up. Either way, I'm going to push this to the next operating round. And we've eaten up a lot of time, but I can't tell how much, because this uses a different counting system. It counts down from like 1,000. I've used up over an hour, haven't I? I don't know. But I want to get through the rest of this sequence on a video. Now it's time to see what the fallout is from this. Well, not just, we thought we'd see it from just the stock round itself, but because of the delay, which he managed to pull off, and it was to his own advantage in some ways, although I think overall he probably should have forced the trains out and caused more problems. Because, hey, that 3 train was actually useful to the Union, right? And everyone else was really relying on all those deuces to get themselves through a little bit of trouble. But there should still be some fallout in terms of incomes, etc., for some of these companies to see how they can handle things. Paid out the mail runs, and we go over to the Pittsburgh. Gets 1 run on that 2+ train. You know, half the reason that I turned on the camera the first time was not just to give the summary for myself, and because you've seen what's going on. For me, it's a new day. But also, there was some kind of complaint about this camera. Oh yeah, my battery life is lower on this camera. It seems to eat up battery quicker, and I only have 1 battery for it. Unlike the other ones where I've been collecting up cameras and may have even bought a spare battery. I have tons of batteries, I have a charger for it and everything. This one I'm pretty much stuck on what I can get off 1 battery. And the Pittsburgh company runs for full with its 2+ train. 26 a share, sweet, whatever. And trying to break through to Chicago, but that's not that big a deal quite yet. And takes out a single loan, which I did not account for, in order to buy that 4 train. That's a perfectly viable, sweet setup, to tell you the truth. I'm going to be able to maybe pay out halves and stuff at times to get enough cash, not just to pay off the loan, but to prepare for, a single or maybe 2 permanent trains. I do have 3 shares sitting in there for the next 2 runs, so I probably want to pay out during those, but we're not positive. So that was an easy transition of the sort of, hey, we're doing this the slow and steady way. Of course, the problem is he has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minus 1, 6 shares in his hands, whereas there are people with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 shares in their hand. So that slow, steady route may still not work. One of the things, I know what I wanted to talk about. The fact that I can transfer trains. This was not the case the first time I played it. I played it with the rules wrong there. I missed that one. Means that I can just pay out, get a lot of cash in here, and create a savior company. And there are easy ways to discard savior companies in this game. where you don't necessarily lose a lot of money. You know, you don't have to go get a permanent train on it necessarily or whatever. The thing you have to do is avoid putting it in debt. Now, of course, you're investing your own money into saving another corporation, which may be as bad as, which may be similar to taking the hit on, say, the debt load or whatever. But it's not the same. Because everything's running and things are going fine and there's really no problem going on there. You're just infusing cash. So this game actually makes it easier, I think. Not that I've done it. I don't think so. It's hard to tell. But I certainly haven't intentionally just done it on that fashion of, hey, let's start a feeder company to infuse cash into my corporation, and then I kind of don't care what happens to it. In 1830 or something, if you do that, you have to find a landing for that feeder company. If you're holding all the shares to it, that's your investment. You lose that, that's fine, whatever, but it's not just that. You got to find some way to get that thing a permanent train or get it into someone else's hands. Boston and Albany here, trying to increase their stock value. Another run allowed them to do that. At some point, I can float to the 10 shares, buy some more shares if I have enough cash of my own. Right now, I've got kind of a problem because of all of this short shares that I've got. That's loans, essentially. This player may have fucked up completely. But in essence, it may be by not having pushed that trade out. He may be just doomed. Speaking of which, his other company goes, and it does not have any trains on it. And buying that 4 train, fine and dandy. So here's where I say feeders kind of don't matter. Next turn, the Boston and Albany could spend $1, buy the Bessemer and Erie Railroad train, and essentially this corporation could disappear. Granted, it's cost me a few $100. You know, but I've infused a few $100 into one of my corporations at basically no cost to myself, beyond, you know, I've been able to transfer it just from my pocket to that corporation, to that corporation, which is something that is not trivial to do in most XX games. So this one now is allowing me the flexibility to build my companies out, you know, with cash out of pocket without much trouble. That's something, again, last time I played, I didn't allow transfer of trains because of not reading the rules correctly. And I think it played a slightly more interesting game because this is just too flexible, too easy to make a corporation work, you know? For the GW here, a couple of issues, or the Grand Trunk question. Iran. So the positioning is like this, and this is something I want to point out, which is kind of interesting about these games where stock market value doesn't necessarily move. And it's important that the track be positioned the way it is and set up the way it is. You know, some people were talking about, hey, just slide them down. They don't have to, you know, that tells you whether it's moved or not. You don't have to flip them. No, that's not sufficient, I don't think. Here, well, maybe it is. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. But the key here, it paid out. It did not move forward, so it stays in place and flips over. Now, if this was down here, not flipped over, it wouldn't go to the bottom. So I couldn't do an inverse or something. I'd have to bump it or something if I did that. But I could just slide it down. So I'm sure I could work out a way to do it. I do use the bottom and top of the chart for sort of a temporary memory thing. So I do have to do the mechanical flipping to maintain that. And I don't want to go into that. That's just, it gives me a couple extra spaces to keep track of things for intermediate states. Now the question is, does the Grand Trunk want a choo-choo? It would take, I think, 5 loans to get one. Each loan at $75. I think I do. Worst case scenario, yeah, I'm taking a lot of loans among a lot of companies, among my 2 companies. But worst case scenario is I can probably get that into a company that will not. So I need to help the Alton and Southern. That's the big problem. And there are people who are short selling the Alton and Southern. So I have a double incentive to do that. And one of the ways I can do that is by getting a big floor train with the Grand Trunk that has the money to do so and move that over to the Alton and Southern. Yes, it leaves the Grand Trunk in a really iffy position, but maybe it can swallow a bit. It's got a high stock value, so it's hard to improve my stock value. And it has not yet done the shift even to 5 shares, so I can put more cash into it. So I want to get that better run there, so I'm going to saddle it up with a bunch of loans for the Alton and Southern. And oh no, I'm not. It's only a 2-share company. I can't do that. Okay, well, I guess it won't take any loans out yet. Okay, and here again, we're getting to tough decisions for players. Over here, Union Railway pays out, moves forward 1. It's giving out 170. It's a fair amount of cash. You can see I'm collecting up huge wads of money that I can throw into getting what I can get 3 more shares of Union. That's a fair bundle of cash that I'm going to be able to throw in there. The question is, do I want to saddle the thing with a bunch of loans and buy a 4 train now, or, and it can, or do I want to rely just on buying shares with it, or what is sort of the decision there? There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4 trains left. Okay. One company has a 3 and a 4 train. That's a really good combination, but if everybody goes for it, first of all, it locks you out of the 5 trains, which are the cheapest trains. For the most part, you can buy the first 5 train, I believe. I think we're allowed 3 trains with the 4s. I find this rulebook a little hard as a reference. I think more because of its construction. It feels fragile. And of course, it's got this annoying gloss, but companies can own 3 trains. So, yeah. 2+ trains can't be bought or sold. That's something I got to keep an eye on. Nobody should be buying a 2+ train, and I hope I haven't cheated on that yet. From another company. You can't transfer the money that way with a dying train, which would be an effective thing. If I have the 2 trains, I can make better money. But the more people who do that, the worse a decision it is. And I look around and there's a lot of people who can, and I'm a little torn on it, you know. There's a lot of money to be made by running 2 trains at this point in the game. But if this point in the game doesn't last very long, it's problematic. And with the export in play, it's never going to hit the kind of wall that it sometimes does with the last 4 train in an 1830 game. So that's something to consider. And I don't know. I feel like I should. I'm going to have a single 4 here, basically. So I've got room to shift things around if I want to buy the 5s. I think that's my argument in favor. So we're going to... Shit. We're not... Oh. So here's the problem. I can throw a lot of money into this company, but not if I saddle it down with a whole bunch of loans. I'll hold. Oh, let's make it harder. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I got no room to throw a lot of money into this company. I have to make space in my stock portfolio to do that. I'm at certificate limit, which is problematic. So I think I do have to buy it. And then just to show you, yeah, you know, theoretically I have to buy it. But if I grab 4 loans, that's $400. That gets me enough cash to buy this. Well, then I need another loan to be able to pay off all my interest. Because interest is $25 each. So I owe $125. So I'd need a 5th loan. Well, I can't do that until I expand. So I have to hold. It's just like ping pong in my mind. Normally I report these things all at once at the end of a single corporation, and sometimes I skip through corporations. I'm going into a lot more detail here because I have less of a grasp on what I'm doing, and that's why I'm speaking through so much. For the Joliet, hooked up basically 2 routes going out of Chicago, and my 2 plus trains gone, paid out half, which moved me forward, had to take a loan out to pay my loan interest. That's never a good idea, taking loans for operating expenses. What? Yeah, that's how you get into a death spiral. But I got more train now. I should be able to survive, and when worst comes to worst, I can retire some of that loan soon. So I don't consider that too bad. I could have paid out full and moved forward twice, but I don't know. It's such a hard decision here because stock value, so in most games, stock value seems like something kind of, I don't know, you have a long way to go, and you can just keep paying out. As long as you pay out something, you go forward. But in the more modern designs, or that seem to be becoming more popular in current time, they are more modern. But with this kind of flat stock market and the idea of if you don't make your stock value, you don't go up in value. But as long as you paid something out, you don't go back. Make stock valuation not this constantly rising graph. Instead, it's like, well, if I don't pay out now, I can make up that ground, and I'm probably not going to hit the 600. That's more of an aspirational thing than like something you can actually reach in this game, or even get terribly close to. You need some really heavy, big trains at the end of the game and a good route to get up there. And if you've got that and you're in good shape otherwise, well, you should have won the game, you know? So it really isn't like this thing where everybody's going to, you know, where not paying out means you're not going to make it as high as you might otherwise. It doesn't mean that. You need to balance your corporate situation. So like the idea of paying out half, well, why? Well, in part because I get cash in my treasury. And sort of the stock valuation thing is more of a, well, I'm giving these guys potential cash when they sell off those shares. Is that terrible? I don't know. Not necessarily, because I'm also increasing the value of these shares and I'm putting more money in there, and there's just, you know, this whole spaghetti ball of information that you have to combine. I decided this dot was important to get that double route, but also in more general terms. I don't know how important it is. This northern route up through Toronto doesn't tend to be, well, in my last game it didn't look very great, and it doesn't here either. Part of the problem is it's got Toronto in it, which you can't block, but it's just not going to get that good. Providence and Worcester here hates its life. I ended up paying the 15 to try to break out here. I'm not sure how wise that is. I got a little tiny run, not much opportunity. I do have the opportunity to buy a train. That train's destined for the New York and Susquehanna. Try to screw the people who shorted it. But not just. It's also useful there and not very useful here. I noticed that I had my token over here, so I think I did not pay the $50 to move the token over. Otherwise, I may have shorted them $50. Whatever. They paid out, but then took themselves out a bunch of loans, so their stock values dropped significantly. I'm planning on using them as a feeder. I do not see them as an interesting line, to tell you the truth. Just yeah. So more loan debt here. Probably going to boost up the number of shares, and buy some of those out at some point. I don't know when, but the main point is to try to get more train power over to the New York and Susquehanna so that I can save that company. That puts us over to the NW, which I don't know what's up with that. NW, on the other hand, is, again, I'm in this situation where I have two corporations. I want to keep one space free for a 5 train. So I'm running the New York and Ontario a little bit less hot than I'm running the Elgin and Joliet, which has been running hard all game. And so I only made, 15 a share, which I unfortunately cheated with. I paid out and swallowed, which is no good. Okay, so I paid out. Let me figure out my loan situation. So instead of paying off a loan, I actually had to take one out. This is not an excellent situation, but I guess I'm going to have to throw some cash into it. Throw it out to a 10 share company to try to pay down those loans. Again, that may end up just being one of those corporations that fades away into the darkness. It's a shame. It's got a lot of dots, which the problem with dots is they don't necessarily help other corporations' immediate income capability. So it's hard to, say, I want to take on loans to buy up those dots, or let's say I clear the loans out of there when it goes insolvent, which is probably a good idea, that it's going to get a lot of return on the stock value in terms of people bidding on it. I mean, those 3 dots are probably, they're worth $50 each in terms of what you must pay to get dots. But when you're looking at additional dots, unlike in 1830 or something, where each additional dot costs more, here, well, the utility for those additional dots is not necessarily worth the same investment value that you initially had to put on dots. So I could see a company like this going for $50 with the 3 dots if it's got, no viable trains and no loan, no debt on it. I could see it maybe with one loan or something going for maybe $10 in the acquisition, or $5 in the liquidation, where there's basically no share value. The loans don't count, right? Once it's in liquidation, the loans are going to be the president's responsibility. So out of whatever stock value he's able to make. So the stock value of that could end up being nothing, which kind of sucks if you keep throwing money into it, right? Well, the value's going into here. Arcade and Attica wasn't able to make much money, and in order to get its 4 train, had to take a huge debt load on, which drops its stock value down to $50 a share. Now we're to the short guys. Let's see what happens. It's not going to be pleasant for the folk who sold short on them. That's not in great shape still. The Susquehanna also is not in great shape right now, but I've got an easy transfer there. So, yeah. Both of them have to have a feeder, though. And here's the thing. Without the ability to shift trains between corporations, short selling something like this, this kind of short sell on either of these 2 corporations, those guys are going to go down. The question is how much the president, if I couldn't get a feeder line for it, how much the president is willing to hurt the corporation to take down the short sellers. And but with a feeder line, you've changed the dynamic completely, and that's a difference between how I saw the two games. So some of my thoughts about short sales probably were looking at, sure, I've got an immediate out, but do I want to live with that immediate out? Is that really, where it's absolutely necessary in terms of, I don't want to get acquired or whatever, that's one thing. Or I don't want to I don't want to collapse completely and end up paying those loans. But where it's a matter of, wow, I can just, slash somebody else's investment to shit by taking maybe a little hit on a feeder line and maybe make my good company, my company that's built nicely but has a debt problem, much, much healthier, which might be a good tactic anyway, but now it's just been boosted in value because, oh look, that asshole's sitting on a bunch of on a bunch of negative shares of my stuff. Let's make him pay. Alton and Southern not being a devastating blow to anyone or nor a big payout. Paid half, made some stock value, essentially it's run with 21, but it paid out 11, which is actually 11 because we're a 10 share company now, which, it's a little bit of damage to the people who are holding the short position, but it's not a tremendous damage. So I'm feeling a little bit less icky about this because I suspect the same kind of thing's going to happen with the Susquehanna. They can't really afford. Now, the Alton and Southern would be different because if this priority wasn't here, it could have been a dump on this guy, which means it could have paid out full and then left his hands with, a huge debt load, maybe eat up a train or something if it could pick up another one, and really hurt both the next owner of it and the people who are holding the short position. And then I just go start another company or put my effort into the Grand Trunk or whatever. It's not like it's that great a position. It's a nice position, but it's not perfect. It's not one of the New York companies or whatever. It's got a lot of power sitting around Chicago, which is of some value, and there are a couple of B's because Pittsburgh's in the game that are near it, but it's just not it's not a stellar location, right? It's a decent location, and the map is pretty much set up at this point where there are pretty decent locations for companies starting anywhere on the board, although there aren't a lot of spaces open left anymore. Boston is probably one of the shittiest places on the board right now. And then obviously starting down here would suck. So what's left? Well, some empty spaces. And not a lot of room for a new corporation to start unless, you fire it off right away with like a friendly sale or an acquisition or something. On to the last of our companies for the operating round. And the Susquehanna as well. Buying a train for $1, running for half. Nowhere to put all my dots. And just no access to places. We hooked up Chicago. That gave us a little bit more pay, but still not anything great. Not able, again, to do a lot of harm to the people who short sold us, but we've probably cost them money and opportunity to some extent. So can't be too upset about things from either side. People who sold a share just as an investment, this guy probably sold one just as an investment. I think this guy mainly sold as an investment. I don't think he needed the money. This guy needed the money. That guy needed the money from them. So I think they did okay in terms of taking out a loan and paying some interest on that loan with their short sale. That's what it really worked out to be. People who did it just as an investment or just to do harm, not so much. Not so good a situation. But they didn't lose that much. You know, sometimes you buy a company stock and it doesn't pay out the way you expect it to. So I can't be too upset. Nobody was crushed by it. Things might have been significantly different if he had gone all out and bought the 3 and 4 trains with the Bessemer. That would have sped up the collapses, and a lot of corporations, even and the Boston and Albany, would have been hurt early too. But a lot of corporations would have paid a price for that, and it might have been more advantageous to have this big short position in that case. But and somebody pointed out they were expecting to see insolvencies here, but my style of more conservative play, which was really, you know, this was a knife edge thing, that choice, right? And I couldn't pull the trigger on the more aggressive move. But my more conservative play across the board with everyone else as well means that things kind of survive. And why is that conservative play in play? Well, part of it is because my view on winning versus losing in a game like this. It's an economic game. Going bankrupt is really, really bad. Like, if you end up really hosed and out of the game and in last place and guaranteed to be in last place or knocked out of the game or whatever, that's sort of a worst case situation. You're an investor here. You should be making money, right? So it's a big difference between, you know, a high risk move that maybe has an 80% chance of knocking you out of the game and a 20% chance of winning, you know, coming in first. That's not worth making, ever. Because, you know, I do view it in a real world type situation. I would view a game of hearts totally differently. I would make that high risk move in a game of hearts, you know. Because to me, coming in second or third in hearts is kind of meaningless. But in this, because there's a real world connection to what's going on, you know, being the second or third richest multimillionaire in the railroad industry, I don't know. That's not so bad. Being bankrupted and unable to, you know, continue in the investments, that is pretty bad. So, you know, the context of the game matters to me. All right. That's going to retire another 4 train. That means there's 1 left going into the stock round again. Same situation as last time, where it's like, I don't know if I want to start a company getting that piece of shit. It's going to go away. But if you can juggle trains, there might be a big prize there, like a couple of 5s for you. And unlike in most of the XX games, there's not just a couple of 5s, there's 5 of them in this game. So if you can set it up so that you're likely, so that you're capable of getting 2 of them, you probably can manage it. You know, in terms of, you probably can't get screwed out of it just by some little ordering changes or whatever. A big short sale or something could shift you far enough down that you no longer get to play in that range. And then, oh, terrible, you get a 6 train. You know, it's not that horrible. The economic cost of maintaining these loans, though, means I don't have the cash to float a 10-share Boston and Albany as a particularly powerful thing. So I pass on that. Pittsburgh already filled up. Grand Trunk, though, that's only 2 shares. I need to get that to 5 shares if it's going to feed the Alton and Southern better. So we're going to expand that sucker. Myself having hard decisions on people on whether or not to buy a share of this. Not so much limited by money. This guy's got no share position, no open certificate limit, so he's just not doing it. This guy was going to do it because there's kind of the, hey, what's the harm, you know, in terms of I get a share of something that is, you know, okay, and I can dump it if I don't want it in the upcoming stock round. The position I'm in, it's not too harmful. I got enough cash, there's no problem there, but the problem is, again, certificate limit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I want to float the Providence and Worcester up to 10 shares, which I don't know if I want to. You know, I'm basically saying, hey, I'll put 70 bucks in for 100. So I think that doesn't really help me. And what do I mean 70 for 100? Well, I only have one share position that I can add to the company out of my own pocket, which means I will be paying money for extra tokens that I don't really need and not adding enough in there. I'll be gaining more loan capability, but I don't want to take loans from this. This is my feeder. It's going to probably die, and therefore I don't want it to die with a lot of loan on it. The main reason I'm trying to, I want to get more money in there is to pay off those loans. So no, I think I will buy a share of the Grand Trunk with this. Is the Grand Trunk the best thing that's likely to go? I don't know. But what options am I going to have? I really don't know. And I would like to have that extra share at this point because I get to pick it up without doing any harm. I can always sell it, and then it forces him to buy things. Of course, then that means I can't own Grand Trunks. It's kind of unimportant whether or not I buy it, to tell you the truth, because that value is not going anywhere between here and here. But there's some priority advantage to grabbing things, you know, grabbing up investments when you get a chance. So we saw, I think, one other release only, which was the New York, Ontario, which went up to a 10-share company. A little bit of investment in it from elsewhere. The main investment came from the owner. Get some more cash in it. Keep it running. Try to pay off those loans. The big question was over here, the Union and the Arcade in Attica. They've been slow at everything. But the main problem is I don't have a way to get cash into it quickly. I don't want to lose control of companies that I'm only sitting on 3 shares of, which probably can't happen, but so I'm going to divest in stocks during the stock market round and get myself set up for the next M&A to float it out there. That means I'll be making less cash, but that's okay. And I think that pushes us to the end of the turn here, and we've clearly gone long enough, I believe, to be able to call this the end of the video. Let's hope the merging of this video works. I haven't done a real one, just the test one, and that did not work right, but I think I know what's going on there, so we shall see.